Well, today we're in for a special treat. We're not only going to hear from Maestro Gerad Schwarz, we're about to be treated to a virtuoso performance by an exceptionally talented young pianist. And here to introduce our program, please welcome our member, the president of the Seattle Young Artists Music Festival Association, Greg Toy.
Thank you, Bill. Well, I'm thrilled to introduce today's performing young artist, Gila Dabastani. Gila is here representing the 500 young musicians who will be performing at this year's Seattle Young Artists Music Festival just 3 weeks from now. But before we hear from Gila, I want to take just a little bit of time here to tell you about the festival because it's a hidden gem here in our community. The Seattle Young Artists Music Festival is different than most music festivals across the country. This festival is organized this way. It is non-graded, it is learning-focused, it is assigned not just by grade but by achievement level, and it is not group-focused, but it is individual-focused. Now, those of you who may be experiencing a little deja vu right now, that's because Don Nielsen, who was down in Palm Springs today and couldn't be here, is standing on his chair cheering. For those of you who don't know Don, he's a prominent education consultant who was here this November and again in January with his recommendations for reforms to the public education system. His message, education should be non-graded, learning-focused, grouped by achievement level, and individually focused. The Seattle Young Artists Music Festival founders came to the same conclusion 37 years ago. The Seattle Festival is a preferred destination for our country's top music educators. They come here from such prestigious organizations as Juilliard, the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra of New York, the Cleveland Institute, Oberlin Conservatory, Eastman, Curtis, Indiana University, all of the top music programs. They want to come to this festival because our model allows them to really instruct, to guide, to interact, and to share their passion for performance, rather than just assigning a grade or a class rank with a few notes on a piece of paper. And they know it allows our kids a real opportunity to learn. The result is the kids often take a quantum leap in their musicianship, and you can hear it in their growing artistry and in the improved mastery of their chosen instrument. This positive experience of interacting with adjudicators at this level and truly learning and improving provides a significant motivation to work harder and set higher goals. To date, over 12,000 kids have given over 20,000 individually adjudicated performances, and the festival has grown from an event held in 2 assembly rooms of a local church to an event that occupies the entire music building and some of the art building at the University of Washington for a full week. The festival is run completely by volunteers who truly embody the Rotary values of service above self. Many of them are with us here today. And ladies and gentlemen, 2 of those founders who had this vision 37 years ago and are still active participants are with us here today, Michiko Miyamoto and Willard Schultz. Michiko and Willard, would you please stand? We'd like to acknowledge your contributions to music education here in our community. Please. Now, 2 quick points before Gila gives you a taste of the festival experience. The festival's culminating event is a Concerto Winners Concert where 6 young artists are selected to perform with orchestra in a wonderful and inspiring evening of music. This year, the Seattle Young Artists Music Festival Concerto Winners Concert is on May 12th, and you'll want to mark that date on your calendars. It is a Rotary Arts Committee and Rotary Fellowship Committee event. After you hear Gila perform, you're going to want to make sure that you're there. And finally, this year, the Seattle Symphony, which has a tremendous music education program of its own, will select one performer from the Seattle Young Artist Music Festival to perform in Benaroya Hall with the Seattle Symphony in a Discover Music Series concert in October. And Maestro Schwarz, all of us who worked with the festival and all of the participants are so excited and thrilled about this opportunity, and we're grateful to the Symphony's support and their encouragement for young artists and their development and education. This partnership both strengthens our efforts at the Young Artists Music Festival and provides inspiration for all the region's young artists. All right, folks, it's time to experience what it's really all about. To borrow a phrase from the Microsoft Corporation, the wow starts now. Let's give a warm Rotary welcome to today's performing young artist, 14-year-old Gila Dabastani.
You sit on this side of the room, don't you? Hold up your hands. Those are tiny little hands to be doing that. Where do you go to school, Sheila?
I go to Newport High.
Terrific. And how important is it to you to have a world-class arts community?
It's very important because we get to experience so much, and it's so fun to just play.
Well, thank you. And it was fun for us, too. Now you have one more job to do. Are you ready? Okay.
Well, I want to first thank the Seattle Young Artists Music Festival and the Seattle Number 4, the biggest and best Rotary Club in the world, for this wonderful opportunity to perform. I am now pleased to introduce to you today's guest speaker, the leader of Seattle's world-class arts community, music director, and principal conductor of the Seattle Symphony Orchestra, Maestro Gerad Schwarz.
Congratulations.
That was fabulous playing, as everyone heard. I'm in a funny position now, because usually what I do is I play and then someone else talks. And I always say, isn't it terrible that they have to talk after hearing great music? Because great music means so much more than the words. It goes beyond the words, and the way you play them is exquisite and extraordinary. Congratulations, really marvelous. And Dave Endicott gave me a very difficult task, as you all know, and the question is, what makes a world-class arts community? And it's not a simple question, and there's no simple answer. We believe here in our community, in this year of 2007, that we have such an arts community. But how did we get here? Why did we get here? Who cared about getting here? And who's to decide? Who says? If I say, we have a world-class arts community, and you all here agree with me, well, that's two good strokes. I think it, and I'm an artist, and I've conducted all over the world. You think it, you're the patrons, you're the audience. And then the third question of perception is, does the rest of the world think it's true? And of course, what you want in life is always those three perceptions to be the same. The way you think of yourself is the way you are, and it's the way others think of you. Sometimes we think more of ourselves in reality, or less of ourselves in reality, but very often that third element, the perception of others, of who we are, is equally important. So what we all strive for, what we strive for here in Seattle, is to create a great arts community for the patrons, the audience, to believe that we are such, and then for the rest of the world to think so as well. We're pretty good on the first two. We're not quite there on the third. We have yet a little ways to go. And I guess, in a way, the reason we are the kind of remarkable community that we are is, in a way, why the perception around the world is not quite as great as we are. It's because we've always done things our own way. Many of you remember Sam Rubenstein, a great businessman, a great dear friend of all the arts in this community, who died a couple of weeks ago. And Sam's desire always was to have the arts part of our life in this community. He didn't feel that we should have to import it from Chicago or from New York or from Los Angeles. It should be ours. And when he started supporting the arts, and he was a very early supporter of Pilchuck, of ACT, of the Rep, of the ballet, of the opera, and of course of the symphony, it was because he wanted it to be ours rather than having to import it. And if you look historically at where we came from, it's very interesting. Because our orchestra, for example, was founded in 1903. That makes us the 8th oldest orchestra in the country. Now, when you think about it, you expect the orchestras in the East Coast to be first. True enough, New York was first, and Boston and Philadelphia. And then you expect the Midwest orchestra to be next. True enough, Chicago, St. Louis, of course, you know St. Louis was the center of the Midwest before Chicago was, so Chicago, St. Louis, and Cincinnati. There's a question about Dallas because they never incorporated, as you would expect the Texans not to do. And then we came next, long before Los Angeles or San Francisco or Portland or Vancouver or anyone else here on the West Coast. And we always had, and we still do have, this independent feeling. I mean, you all have it, I have it, our business community has it, our educational institutions have it, our medical institutions have it. We think independently. We don't think that we have to do things the way they do it somewhere else. One of the extraordinary things about coming here for me 23 years ago was to realize that I didn't have to copy what came from New York, where I came from. I didn't have to do it. If they did bad things in New York, I didn't have to create them bad here as well. I could ignore them. So there were fads in the music world that were very New York-centric, that were not important artistically, and we never did them here, and, you know, they don't exist anymore. So it's really quite an extraordinary thing that we have created in this community. Okay, so we're talking about an arts community, so who wants it to begin with? I mean, let's say, we all say we want a great arts community. Well, how do you do it? Do you do it by, let's say we import a great symphony orchestra. There was a conductor named Pierre Boulez, whom many of you may know. He was music director of the New York Philharmonic when I was in the New York Philharmonic. And he said to me once, actually more than once, give me enough money and I can create an art center anywhere in the world. He thought it was all about money. This was at a time when he said he would never go back to France. And he worked in Germany, and he worked in the United States, and he worked in England. And then they gave him a lot of money to start the Pompidou Center, and he went back to Paris. And so when I questioned him, and I said, Pierre, how come you're going back to Paris when you'd said you never step foot in that city again because it was so horrible? That's when he said, give me enough money and I can create it. And I thought to myself, well, what about Wichita? I'll give you a lot of money. Go to Wichita. Can you create that? He said, absolutely, no question. Wichita, he probably could. There probably was some other cities where it wouldn't be possible because what you have to have, of course, is the audience. The audience is the key. If we play great music, if Julia plays spectacularly on the piano and no one ever hears her, how wonderful is it? Well, we don't know. You've never heard it. You have to have the audience that cares deeply, that wants it to be great. You have to have all of us marching to the same drum saying, yes, we want to be a great arts community. So in the case of Seattle, it started with the Symphony in 1903. Well, clearly, it wasn't a great orchestra in 1903. It was a very mediocre orchestra. They rehearsed for, I think, 3 months for their first concert. Nowadays, we rehearse 3 days for our concerts. So you can imagine the quality of what they were trying to do. They were trying to create something on a high level, but it took them lots and lots of time to do it. The symphony then grew and grew, and at one time, as most of you know, we were the only story in this town except for the Art Museum. The Art Museum, of course, was extraordinary in Volunteer Park, and the symphony was growing. The symphony started the opera. The opera started the ballet. The Rep came into existence, and it became a leader. You know, Broadway shows now get their start here at the Rep, and then ACT started, Intiman started, all the theater companies started. The museum started to expand, and of course you had other museums in the community. All of a sudden, there was density. You can't have a great arts community if all you have is a symphony orchestra and you don't have an opera and a ballet and theater and all the other, and educational institutions, a great radio station, educational television station. It doesn't exist unless you have the density. So what happened over a period of time is we had the density. The density is great, but again, it's about the audience. So what about the audience? For example, in our institution, the Symphony, we earn 60% of our budget from ticket sales. Now, one would say, oh, isn't that terrible? Which it is. It's a shame. That means we have 40% that we don't earn. But most orchestras in this country earn 40%. Think about that. The difference between that and what we do, 40, 45%, and 60% that we do here, which means we have a large audience. Arts Fund put out a notice a few years ago, said 7 million tickets are sold in this community. 7 million tickets. Now, obviously, some of you are repeats, but that's a lot of tickets. They figured that something like $250 million is spent on the arts. That's an extraordinary, you know, going out to dinner, some people who come in to go to the Ring in the summer, or who go to Pilchuck, or people who buy tickets. I mean, it's a lot, it's an extraordinary amount of intensity. And yet what we've always done here is done everything our own way, almost like in a maverick way. I'll tell you a little story. We all know our great radio station, King FM. It's one of the greatest radio stations in the country, one of the most successful, if not the most successful commercial classical music station. Now, this is a station that's flourishing at a time when classical music radio stations are being closed down all the time. You read about one being closed down in Washington, D.C. this week, another one going out of business or selling to a pop or talk show in Los Angeles this week. I mean, just terrible things. How has King survived? Because the Bullitt family had this vision that it should be a nonprofit. Now, how do you make a commercial radio station nonprofit? I mean, I still don't understand how we did that. And that it should be owned by Arts Fund, the Opera, and the Symphony. I mean, it's extraordinary, the kind of thinking that we do here in this community. The partnerships that we have, not only with King. In the Symphony, we have a new record that most of you have probably seen at Starbucks. Imagine a symphony orchestra working with a major corporation to sell a CD in coffee houses. I mean, it's a little bizarre. Not only that, it's all new music, all modern music, written specifically for the CD. Of course, it's not modern music, it's Brahms and Handel and pieces like that, but they're all with a different idea. When I went to Starbucks with the idea of doing a classical CD, we had 20 ideas, you know, music to eat by, music to go to the beach by, music inspired by the sun, music inspired by the moon, by the dance. You can think of all the ones, you know, music to drink coffee by, you know, coffee cantata, Bach. Anyway, the 20th idea was the most difficult. It was commissioning 6 composers to do new pieces for us based on older forms. And of course, they're brilliant people at Starbucks. They got it right away. They said, that's the one we want. And I thought, oh, God, why did I suggest that? And I did, and we produced it, and now it exists, and it's making a huge impact. Here we are, once again, on the cutting edge of using our imagination to integrate ourselves in our community, and that's the key. The key for success and making a great cultural center is making the center a part of the community. So we don't, I mean, I talk a little bit about the Symphony because I know more about it than the others, but we don't just do our concerts in our hall. You know, we do community concerts all over the city. We're doing a series of concerts now at the Triple Door, a jazz club. We're not playing jazz. We'd be fools to play jazz because jazz players play it better than us, just the way we played Beethoven better than them. You know, there were some orchestras in our country, especially in the Southwest, that thought, oh, the way to attract a great classical audience is by doing salsa music and Tex-Mex, all this kind of south of the border music. And the artists who do this music so wonderfully were so offended that symphony orchestras were trying to do what they did badly. Instead of just that they said, well, just imagine us playing the Beethoven Fifth. I mean, does it make any sense? And then why should your patrons care about it and give to it and support it if what you're doing is replicating what we do, except not nearly as well as we do? So we go over to the Triple Door and do a series of concerts there, but we play chamber music. We play it our way, well, with a little amplification, maybe not, the pieces aren't long. It's a huge sensation. We have in our community probably the greatest glass artists in the world. I know when I was in Murano last, outside of Venice, they disputed that, as you can imagine. They said, oh no, we have the greatest glass artists here because they've all studied with the masters, who studied with the master, who studied with the master, and goes back, 300 years, and they all had the same teacher, and they're the greatest. But that's not what the greatest is. What greatness is imagination and artistry. And you have to create something. Pilchuck created something. They created something with a few glass artists who inspired other glass artists. And all of a sudden, there's a community of glass artists that live here. We take advantage of that this spring. We're going to do a big production of Bluebeard's Castle of Bela Bartok using a magnificent, huge set by Dale Chihuly. It's the way we try in the symphony. Opera does the same thing, the ballet does, the theater does, to integrate ourselves so that we are part of the community. We are not an isolated top of some hill that everyone says, oh, let's look up to the great symphony. No, we try to be part of this community. And as a result, we create a certain excitement from every institution in the community. Our strength becomes everyone else's strength. So if you have a strong opera, you'll have an opera that's coming out of Tacoma. You'll have a Gilbert and Sullivan Theater. If you have a ballet company, all of a sudden you have small ballet companies around town who are trying to do things innovatively and differently. We have smaller orchestras. We have the Bellevue Philharmonic or the Seattle Philharmonic or the Tacoma Symphony. You have institutions that are coming because the environment is wonderful for the arts here. And the environment is wonderful for the arts here because this community cares about the arts. We want it to be great. Every community throughout history is more recognized for the quality of its arts than anything else. Think about it. Businesses try very hard to not be identified with the community, purposefully. Because you want to feel, if you're going to buy a Bose headset in England, you want to think it comes from Europe somewhere. I was talking to a friend of mine in England. I said, where do you think Bose comes from? And he said, Scandinavia. Well, Bose comes from, I think, Milwaukee. But they don't want to know that. You know, when I was living in Liverpool for 5 years, there's a tremendous Costco there. It looks just like all the Costcos around here, and they all think it's an English company. Which is what they want, which businesses, it's smart. So they don't identify the community. Boeing does to a certain extent. Well, they didn't like it anymore, so they decided to move to Chicago. It always annoys me when I see the articles about Boeing and it says Chicago, where it comes from. And I keep talking to my friends at Boeing, shouldn't they move back? Don't you think they should move back? I think so too. So I was talking to my son on the way to school this morning, and I said, well, what do you think about science? Do you think science identifies a community? I mean, it's, the salt vaccine, the polio, I mean, all these vaccines that were created by these great scientists, or the light bulb. Edison, he said to me, okay, where does Edison come from? I came from New Jersey. Didn't he come from New Jersey? And I think that's right. And then he said, what town? And of course I said Edison Township, which of course isn't true. But it was after he died that they renamed Edison Township Edison. Anyway, so the point he made, my son, was that, well, scientists are not known, hospitals are, right? Higher school, educational institutions. You think of the Mayo, think of the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. Everybody knows that is a Seattle Cancer Center. Sloan Kettering Memorial in New York, everybody knows that's from New York. The Mayo Clinic, people in the Johns Hopkins, they identify the community. We in the arts identify with our community. We're called the Seattle Symphony. The opera's called the Seattle Opera. The rep's called the Seattle Rep. The ballet is called the Pacific Northwest Ballet, the Seattle Art Museum, and so forth. We, in a sense, represent the community more than anyone else. And we represent it internationally. We actually travel a little bit. When I travel all over the world, people always think of me as the conductor from Seattle, and that's what I am. I am a Seattle person, so I represent you, and hopefully well. There will be no scandal from this person, you can be sure. And so, in a sense, not only do we care about being a world-class cultural destination, we also can represent this community forever. When we look back on the history of some of these institutions, like the Symphony, Stravinsky conducted us, and Gershwin conducted us, and Copland conducted us, and Howard Hanson conducted us. Sir Thomas Beecham was here. Milton Katims was here. I mean, we have a tremendous history. The same way we have phenomenal history with all of the arts. And I think Sam Rubinstein was right. We have now created our own, and we have created a certain density to the point where even we have some remarkable singers living here now. Never happened. When I first came, there was almost very few singers of operatic types who were living here. Now we have a half dozen of the finest singers in the world living in our community. In fact, one of our dear friends who left Seattle to go to Boston is coming back because even though he thought he would love Boston more, he realizes that his home is really here, and he wants to come back to Seattle. We have a member of our orchestra who went to New York to play in one of the orchestras there, and he wants to come back because this is a very special place artistically, of course, in other ways, but it's that way because of the audience. The key for us is to play for a large appreciative audience. If we don't have that audience, then it's meaningless. And we have that because we have people here who care about the finer things in life. They work hard, they use imagination, thank God we have these great companies that have created not only wealth, but have brought brilliant people to our community. And so we're a very lucky place. And it's a place now that I believe is on the verge of exploding much further because we're getting a little older. When I came here, I was young like everyone else, and now I'm older like everyone else, it seems like, and we're all getting to the point where the little things start to matter more in our lives. I hope that's true for all of you as it is for me, whether it's reading, whether it's listening to the radio, turning on public television, or going to the symphony. So anyway, what creates it? What really creates a great arts community is you. Those people that care enough to come, We're going to go on the stage. We're going to give our all to give you the best we possibly can. And we're going to always strive to be better. We'll never stop. There's not a day that goes by where I don't try to be better than I was yesterday. There's not a rehearsal. There's not a concert where I don't think about how I could do it better. Better for you, so that you can come and you can love it the way I do. And then, as Julia said, we're up there, and I apologize for using this, we're up there playing. We say, what are you playing today? We don't say, what are you working today? We played the Beethoven 4th and 5th piano concertos today because we are lucky. We do what we love, and we're especially lucky because you're there to listen to us do it and appreciate it. And so what creates it? You do. And we do our best to make sure that you have the best. And thank you for letting me speak to you today.
Before he steps down, how many of you have attended at least one performance by the Seattle Symphony this season? See, you're among friends. Thank you.
I saw a few that didn't, though. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I expect to see you there.
And these Beethoven piano concertos, you don't want to miss them. You know, and I thank you, sir. I'm really happy to hear the news about the internet because my wife and I have been subscribing to Musically Speaking for many years. And we're always disappointed when we go to a concert and you come out and don't take the microphone and tell us what's happening. So it'll be nice to know we can go online and get an explanation. And take a moment to introduce yourself to this lovely young lady. Gila, thank you for your phenomenal performance. You have a wonderful future. Thanks again, and welcome to the volunteers and founders of the Young Artists Music Festival. Thank you, Greg, for bringing them and for bringing Gila to us. And thanks to all our program participants. Ken Ham, thanks again, and we're honored to have you as a member of this club, sir. Next week, March 7th, something new. We're going to meet at the Convention Center, and Mayor Greg Nichols is going to deliver his State of the City address to this club. In recent years, this has been done in council chambers. The mayor specifically asked to come and give the address to Seattle 4. And the members of the council will be here. Members of the public will be invited in. I think it's going to be a great opportunity. That brings us to this week's pretty good rule. Become a good mentor and learn to accept mentoring from others. No matter what stage of life you're entering, you've never been there before and you still have a lot to learn. See you next week. We are adjourned.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from Enterprise Seattle. For over 35 years, Enterprise Seattle has provided client-based economic development services to businesses throughout King County and its 39 cities. More information on Enterprise Seattle and how they help businesses grow and prosper can be found at www.enterpriseseattle.org. And by First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.